Welcome to the Whitetail Advantage Podcast with your host, Brett Bovin. Thank you for tuning in and enjoy the show.
Welcome, everybody, to the Whitetail Advantage Podcast. I'm your host, Brett Bovin. Co-host Dan Asher is running a little late today. But I'm just going to keep him in timeout. You know what? Shame on him. Today is episode 45, starting in Illinois week. And not going to lie, everyone in my household, like we talked about yesterday, is sick. Everyone's throwing up. So I got like maybe 10 hours of sleep in the last 2 days, trying to make sure I clean up everyone's throw up. But I go off a tangent right there. But if this is your first time listening, we do a live show Monday through Thursday covering states. Talk to multiple guests from that state, and tonight's guest is Dylan. I'm not going to say his last name because I'm pretty sure I'm going to ruin it. So I'm going to let him do it and let him introduce himself, okay? All right, so I'm going to do two jobs. Hey, Dylan.
Hey, how are you?
Good. How about you, buddy?
Oh, not too bad. We're getting ready to get hit with some rain, so it's a pretty good day here. We need it really bad.
Yeah, my wife was telling me that we have a huge thunderstorm coming in late tonight and basically all morning tomorrow. So I'm sure you guys are getting that same storm before us.
Yeah, it's we actually just looked at the radar, and it's not far. I don't know if you can hear the wind hitting the tent in the shed or not right now, but it's getting pretty close. But like I said, we need it, so I'm not upset about it.
Yeah, it was really windy out here today. Like, I mean, shit, you can almost see trees going sideways at some points. It got so windy.
Yeah.
Well, Dylan, for everyone that doesn't know you, can you go ahead and give a quick little bio about yourself?
So my name's Dylan Bushur. I live in Central Illinois. I run my own land management business. We farm a couple hundred acres. My father and I do. Help my grandfather. We got about 50 head of cattle that we take care of. So we are pretty busy about all year long. We enjoy the outdoors, fishing, hunting, about everything you can do. We try to go west every year to Colorado to elk hunt. So we do a little bit of everything, but we spend a bunch of our time in the deer woods. So
now this land management, what's the name of it and how long have you been doing it?
So my business name is Wabash River Outdoors. I've been doing it for 4 years. We cover most of Illinois. We don't go crazy far north up closer to Chicago or anything that direction, obviously. But we've been down to Kentucky. We've been over to Indiana. We haven't been into Missouri, but hopefully that'll change here pretty soon. With the guys I used to work for, we've been up into Iowa and over in Missouri and stuff like that. So that's kind of between my father raising me in the deer woods and all that, and then with the guys I used to work for, that kind of sparked the flame. So now we pretty much do it all year except during deer season. Guys usually don't want us on the farm during deer season, so that's our dead time.
So what's it like kind of running that? Is that your full-time job, or are you trying to make it into a full-time job?
So we're working on make it full-time this year. We probably should have. We got really, really busy really quick this year between doing consulting stuff with guys, walking farms, and just running the skid steer and clearing food plots, and there's a bunch of miscellaneous stuff. We get farmers that want us to clean, push the field edges back, clean the overhanging branches and stuff like that. So we do, like I said, we do a bunch of different stuff, but from pretty much January on, we'll be either running a skid steer walking farms with guys, working. We don't get to work on our own farm as much as we'd like to, but we try to squeeze that in when we can. But I mean, yeah, a little bit of everything. As soon as deer season ends here, I mean, we had stuff booked 2 days after season, and it was pretty much snowballed from there on. So,
Oh wow.
but yeah, I don't know if I've had but maybe two weekends since the middle of January that we haven't been doing stuff, and pretty much every other day since. So, but some big jobs that have consumed a bunch of our schedule too, and a handful of half day and a half jobs. But we had 3 or 4 jobs this in the last 2 months that took up about 3 weeks of our schedule. So, which is awesome, but it is nice being able to, when we get them long jobs, break it up a little bit and do 3 or 4 days of that job, and then go do something different. But running a chainsaw, doing TSI work for 7 days straight isn't always real fun to a bunch of guys. So,
Right.
so we try to break it up a little bit, and the body usually wants a break too after about 3 or 4 days. So,
Real quick, did you hear that hissing kind of noise? Is that the wind you were talking about?
that is the wind. So I'm
Oh
hoping,
my gosh, that's
yeah,
insane.
yeah, I'm hoping it doesn't, cause any issues. But we had like 45-mile-an-hour gusts today.
Oh no, it's no problem. I'm just like, dang, is that really what I'm hearing?
Yeah,
That's insane.
yeah, it is. Like I said, I'd say we're going to get hit with it here probably within an hour. I would say it's over by St. Louis. It looked like right now. So,
Okay.
but yeah, this is what the wind's been like all day. It's pretty wild right now.
So when someone contacts you, how long do you generally, like, what are they generally asking for your services? Like, can you kind of run us through that process, and like how long does it generally kind of like take? Do you set aside like one day for like a walkthrough? How does that process go?
So usually a lot of guys, we try to post, stay pretty active on Facebook, just to keep guys, because a lot of guys don't think about anything until after season is over with. Either they were really happy with it, how it went, or they weren't real happy with it, and they're trying to find something, to change. So we try to keep our schedule a little bit open for guys that decide to do stuff, after season ends. But we'll have guys that'll contact us in September before season starts. And then a bunch of them are repeat clients too. So we'll kind of have a schedule like this year. This is what we want to do. Excuse me. Next year, do like a 4 or 5 year plan with guys so they can. One, it helps the pocketbook too, being able to break it down, yearly for them, and then it helps them see progress too. Everybody wants, especially when they're hiring stuff out, guys want to see progress, and results. Those are the big things. So usually guys will get a hold of us, and we get a lot of guys that just they don't know where to start, how to start. And that's when coming to the farm helps a bunch. Seeing what they're working with, what their farm looks like, and going from there. So a lot of our stuff starts with guys just reaching out and asking if we can come to the farm. They may think they want to put a 4 or 5 acre food plot over here, and when you get to the farm, they may have gobs of food and hardly any bedding. So that's what we try to do is get on the farm to walk it with them and, say, hey, this is what we see. And this is what, we know, based off all the years that we've screwed up on stuff and have learned, and from whether it be on YouTube or stuff like that, or just, following guys as they go through their process of building their farm and stuff. We try to learn as much as we can off other guys too, because we don't know everything. We know much as as much as we as much as I knew everything about deer and all that, we don't. We're always learning. But that's, like I said, that's usually how it starts. Guys wanting us to come out, and like I said, they don't know, and that usually transpires from the visit to, okay, this is what I would do if I owned this property. If it was my farm, this is what I would be doing with it. And a lot of guys don't have the equipment or the time to do all that work. So that's where we kind of step in and can help guys out with stuff. We try to build a plan for guys that break it down and make it as easy to understand as they can, because we don't want you to look at it and be like, what the heck is this? This makes no sense. I want you to be able to look at it and say, hey, okay, this is this corner of the farm. This is what we're going to do to it, or this 2 acres is, going to be in switchgrass or whatever. Right. So, we want it to be, pretty self-explanatory for guys. So when the time comes that they need to do, whether it be spraying or working ground or whatever, they know that they can go do that. Or if they, don't have the time or can't, then they know they can reach out to us or, somebody else in their area. Since we've started this, we've met a bunch of guys that do stuff similar to us. So we have contacts, and stuff for if we're busy or if it's just a little too far that we don't, can't travel to it. Which is pretty awesome to be able to help guys, that way too. But
yeah. Well,
so
Dan
Dylan?
just finally joined us tonight.
Yeah, sorry about that, man. I got held up at work, and
Well, you don't have to apologize. You're all good.
yeah,
But
work nights are a little crammed. If one little thing goes wrong, then it sets me back. But thank you for coming on, man.
Nope. I appreciate it. You guys reaching out, and I'm happy to do it.
Yeah.
So we were talking, Dan, about his land management property business, and I'm kind of curious of, would there be a distance that you wouldn't go as like a state's like, that's just too far for us, we can't go out that way? Is there do you run into like those type of situations?
We've had guys in Kansas reach out to us. We've never been out there, especially hauling equipment. We've never gone that far. If we could get guys, we could get 4 or 5 jobs out there all within, an hour of each other, to make it worth our trip out there. That's a different story. But in reality, hauling stuff 8 hours, we're not going to do that. We have enough stuff here within about 2.5 hours of home, 3 hours that keep us plenty busy. But I'm not opposed to loading stuff up and heading out there. It'd be awesome to go spend a week out there working on farms for guys out in Kansas or, Ohio or stuff like that. But our goal is to try to keep stuff within 3 hours. And 90% of the time we can do that.
And you guys do everything, like excavating, like clearing trees, all that?
Yeah. So we're actually, I just have a skid steer and stuff like that. I don't have that big of equipment, but I have really good connections to, large equipment, bulldozers, excavators, stuff like that.
Oh, wow.
So that's,
you guys are...
Yeah, we're actually working on a job right now. That's what we started on last week. It's 6 acres of an old tree program that expired, and you can't see about 5 yards through it. So we got skid steers and excavators in there ripping trees out and pulling trees, and it's all going to go back into a food plot for a guy. So, which it's that stuff. I love that part of it. It's fun. And the landowners like seeing that, especially a quick transformation like that. In a matter of a week, we can have it from thick, nasty stuff to open it back up. And that's like what I was telling you about. That's how we got this job is him wanting to come out or him wanting us to come out and, walk the farm with him and see it. And, he has so much bedding on his farm, but he couldn't get a half acre of brassicas or clover to grow because a deer would just annihilate it. So that's what, after walking the whole farm and looking at everything around it, that's what we kind of made the decision that we're going to go in, and with the tree program expiring and not paying them hardly anything for the re-signing the contract, we decided that we're going to go in and clear a bunch of it out, and it's going to go back into a big food plot this year. So it should be awesome. It'll be awesome to we'll be able to post, before and after pictures and progress photos, as we move along.
Yeah, I also saw a really cool photo on your page of what looked like a controlled burn. You guys do a lot of those too?
We try to limit ourselves. It's a really, really big liability.
That's where I was getting at with it. Yeah, like I wanted to know like what your experiences were with doing it. Like if you ran into any problems or anything like that.
You're knock on wood. We've only had one instance where it's been where the wind switched on us in the afternoon. But everything else has gone, really, really good. At the worst, we burned about another acre of switchgrass that we didn't want to burn. So
could have been worse.
That's pretty much, very, very, very quick. It could have been, and that's what, like I said, we try to limit ourselves on that because the liability is it's so high. And when it comes to prepping for that stuff, we don't let landowners do it. We do it ourselves. That's part of the deal. If they want us to come burn that, we do all the prep for it. So it's, it puts more on our shoulders, but we just don't let guys do it because I'm not going to go, we don't want to go to the farm and him only have 6-foot fire breaks cut on a big thing of switchgrass. So we take it. It's something that we got to take really, really serious. But they are really cool to do, and they're really, really fun to do, especially when it all goes how you want it to.
What's it like going in the planning process of doing one of those?
Oh, around here, a lot of guys are taking like pasture ground and turning it into switchgrass. If you can frost seed switchgrass, that's something that we always talk to guys about that don't have the equipment to do that or to go in and drill switchgrass in. If you have the equipment to get switchgrass in, we 100% recommend drilling it in. But there's a whole list. We could spend quite a bit tonight just talking about
when you say drilling,
ways to get switchgrass.
When you say drilling the switchgrass in, what do you mean by that? Like forcing the seeds down like below the soil?
Yeah, so like instead of using like a planter, like a corner bean planter, like Great Plains and Land Pride make a seed drill. So it's they're not as accurate or precise as like a farm planter is, but they are more accurate and precise than broadcasting and going out and throwing stuff using a broadcast seeder. They got they have rows and stuff like that, and it's not as good as a farm planter, but it's better than broadcasting it out on the ground usually. So, but yeah, it puts the seed in the soil and covers it up, which is crucial when it comes to wanting something to grow. It has to be in the soil and it has to get covered up for you to have a lot better results. But
have you gone to a kind of go off topic off of that, but have you got to a place where you said that you've been doing this for 4 years in the fall, correct? Has there been like one place where it's like that piece of property is going to stick out to me for a while? Like I'm proud of that place the most.
Yeah, one farm down deep southern Illinois that we've done a bunch of work on, and probably 80% of it was going back and adding bedding to that farm, whether it been majority of it was back into timber bedding. They had timber. It was gorgeous timber. And, but you could see 200 yards through it. I mean, it was something that, it was beautiful, high value, logging timber. But the unfortunate thing is, those really pretty farms that look like that don't have deer on them. That's the unfortunate reality about it. More times than not here in Illinois, your lower value farms, in the eyes of, timber and ag ground, are usually some of your better deer hunting pieces that are covered in scrub brush, draws, just thick, nasty stuff. So that's what, like this farm, it was wide open timber. It's about, I think everything that they can hunt and own is like 1,100 acres or something, right around 1,000 acres between what they own and lease around them. And this farm has made leaps and bounds as far as deer numbers, turkey numbers, the quality of deer that they're seeing on the farm. They shot a 10 this year with double drop tine on him, and with the other one, they were thinking he'd have gone in the low 190s. They had him scored at like 180, 184, something like that, as a typical 10 with double drop tines on them.
Wow.
So you can kind of imagine how big of a frame that deer had on them. And the big thing with that farm, like I said, it didn't have any bedding. Their numbers were pretty low. When we went and walked that farm, I think I saw like 7 deer on about 1,000 acres.
That's crazy.
So yeah, that kind of gives you a little bit of idea on how vacant that property was.
And what'd you do for the bedding? Just like, what did you add to give them cover?
So a bunch of it was we dropped a bunch of trees. We cut pretty much all their low value trees on their property. Now it wasn't just walking through the farm and just dropping a bunch of trees. They were all we had it all mapped out how we wanted to do it and where we wanted to place those beddings locations. Some of them, a bunch of them were on south facing slopes. A couple of them were up on ridge tops. And some of it was just on big benches in their timber. So it, just in them 4 things there, you're talking, 3 or 4 different locations just within the timber that deer can bed. So it was a big, like I said, it was a big jump for the farm. But yeah, like I said, we pretty much just went in and dropped a bunch of their invasives and stuff like that. Low timber, low value timber. It was looked at by a forester, and so they had a bunch of stuff marked on what and what they wanted cut and stuff like that too. So hopefully the goal is here, in the next 15, 20 years or less, for them to go in and log it and get a nice, paycheck off of that timber to help, pay for stuff and help pay for the farm and all that. But they, the other thing, like I said, the turkey numbers exploded on it. They went from, he said there, I know the one phone call we had last year, he said there were probably 200-300 birds on their farm, to where before it was 50, 60. And, when somebody says, I saw a flock of 60 birds, a lot of guys are like, holy cow, that's a bunch of birds. But when you're talking 1,000 acres of 75% timber, there should be 200 birds down in that location where they're at. It should just be covered with birds. And I know we were down there last summer, and we kicked up 3 or 4 flocks of probably 20 to 30 poults in each one. So it was, that was kind of a rewarding, thing to see, that not only the deer, are benefiting from it, but there's a lot of other things too. The thing that sucks about it, when those numbers start going up, so do your predator numbers too. That's all just a trickle effect. So their coyote numbers are better. Their bobcat numbers are better. Hawks are like crazy everywhere down around here. But that's, that comes with it when you start, predator and prey, so that's unfortunately how it goes, but that is the one farm when somebody, says something like that, that farm will always stick with us, on what the leaps that it's made, and just the pure size of it. It's one of them, you look at it and it's like, you look like this farm goes on forever, and in some ways it does, but it's a pretty special place. They got a really special piece of property there, and they got a 3.5-year-old this year they had on it. If they can get it to 2 more years, and they end up killing it, I'd say there's a good chance we'll see it on a magazine somewhere.
Oh, wow.
Really?
It's one of them. He's a deer right now at 3.5 years old that it's really, really hard not to want to go, try to get him. But, they are pretty, they're sticklers when it comes to, quality, deer herd, and deer health, herd health. So they really push for the 4.5, 5.5-year-old deer, down there. Which
is that the rain?
Yeah.
Oh man.
Yeah.
Yeah, we got some rain coming tonight too. Yeah, probably the same rain you've got is heading our way.
Yeah, it is. I would go inside, but we got the dogs inside, and I didn't want to listen to them go crazy. So I was like, we're out here working on equipment, so I will just do it while I'm out here.
Oh yeah, you're fine. Don't worry about it. I just thought it was hilarious. Like, man, you could hear it. I can hear it through my freaking headphones. It's that loud.
Yeah. Which it's it's a tin roof and everything and siding. So, but yeah,
it might be a stupid question though. But how do you track the process of like the deer that are on there? Are you putting cell cameras out there, or are they putting the cameras out there and they're sending them the photos to you?
So. Most of it's cell cameras, and like I said, a lot of farms, you'll see maybe a not as drastic of an increase in numbers on a farm. Usually it may take a couple years before, and a lot of guys, even if it does, happen that next year, they usually don't realize it, because what we've learned is a lot of guys go out to hunt and not learn. They're going, and that's what when we get done with or talking to guys, that's what we tell them. Is if you go out there and try to learn and understand what's going on, and it may just be something that this doe and fawn, come out of this corner of this field. But if you can start to learn why they come out of this corner of the field, instead of the other corner or whatever, that's what we want guys to be able to do. But as far as being able to track numbers, this farm had such a big jump and it had such low numbers on it. It was, you could just tell off of natural browse through the timber, and around the field edges, and how the crops grew on the farm. The farmer was complaining that he can't get anything to grow because the numbers were so high. So that was, that there itself was a big indicator when the spring, when the farmer couldn't hardly get a 25-acre, 30-acre bean field to grow. So we knew that the numbers had gone up, but they didn't start sending me. I don't think they had cameras up until late summer out there. and obviously the intel right away off of just the difference in the amount of photos that was sent to the cell cameras had gone up a bunch. But then when they got out there to deer hunt, they were seeing 30, 40, 50. Late season, I think they said there were like 70, 80 deer out in the field.
Wow.
So, and then, but like Illinois got hit really, really hard in 2012 with EHD. And then again I think it was 2018, we got hit. It was kind of spotty, but there were some places that got hit really, really hard with EHD. But 2012 was a really hard year for pretty much the whole state.
Same here. Michigan
I think
got
it was
hit
kind of
hard.
like almost countrywide.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah, pretty much. I know the Midwest that year got hit really hard in 12. And he said before that, we've been on that farm pretty much since we started the business. So, 4 years now. But he said, pre-EHD, so pre-2012, it was nothing to see 100 deer out in the field. So that after 12, that was kind of the eye opener for them, as in 7 years, they hadn't had the numbers come back up. Granted, they got hit, again with EHD in 2018, I think is the year it was. So they were, they kind of took two blows there, relatively quick. And the thing is, it takes a long time for a herd to recover from that stuff, especially when you're targeting, 4.5, 5.5-year-old deer. You're talking 6 years pretty much. It took, they got 2 EHD hit hard twice, in 6 years. So your buck that you were wanting to harvest in 2018, he was only a year and a half, it was a year and a half year old buck, or a yearling, fawn in 2012 when EHD hit. So you've gone through what I would call, his first generation of mature bucks, and he got hit again with it. So that's, farms like that, it's really hard to get numbers up. And that's why, we were really, really happy to see how well it did, pretty much instantly. But it just showed that the deer numbers were still there, and they just weren't in his area. They were spread out across whatever other properties. So that was pretty cool. And just adding, when you go in and do that type of bedding in the timber, natural browse is huge for deer, especially come fall and winter. Deer lose a bunch of their food, in the fall and winter. And that's why food plots can be so crucial. And so you can utilize them, so much, because the food isn't there, like what it is in the spring and summer. So that's the other thing that helps a bunch, that gives them a food source still inside of bedding, and through the winter, whether it just be briars and stuff like that. But before there was none of that. It was just the ag fields and the food plots that they planted, because it was all, leaf matter or wide open timber. There was nothing else for them to browse on through the winter months, which is another thing that helped a bunch too.
Yeah.
But,
now
with you, sorry,
go
ahead, Brett.
No, go ahead.
I was just going to say, Dylan, with you being a business owner, and it's a job that probably requires a good amount of time. Does that interfere with your hunting at all? You still able to get out there and get enough time out in the woods?
Usually guys don't want us anywhere near the property come deer season. So, which I'm completely fine with, because that gives us about 3 months of break. We will do a little, like some small projects here and there during the winter, like driveway stuff, or like clearing field edges back for farmers after they get done with harvest. Some small stuff like that, but usually from October to January here, we are pretty slow. So we get to spend a bunch of time in the woods those couple months.
Heck yeah.
we're pretty fortunate with that. But we do try to keep some, income still them months, but majority of our stuff are guys that want to deer hunt. So they're doing the same thing that we're wanting to do come November, so.
Yeah. And then just manage your money throughout the year.
Yeah.
And then hit it hard during hunting season.
Yeah. So that's what,
a good plan.
We, my father goes to Colorado every year. So September hits and we try to go the first 2 weeks or whatever of September. We try to schedule to go out there. But we're usually some years, I've only been able to make it out there once, but he's gone out there every year for the last probably 12 or 14 years, something like that. But
going after elk.
Yeah.
Hell yeah.
So usually we are finishing up fall plots here at that time. So when we do draw tags to go out there or plan to go out there, we have to, plan accordingly. So, but whether that be,
I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
No, go ahead. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to interrupt you.
No, you're good. Whether that be, we plan it, maybe a week early or, a little bit later, but usually when it comes to clients and customers, we knock all their stuff out, and it may be us planting our stuff on our farm when we get back. So we try to take care of everybody through the beginning of August to the beginning of September. But
what's it like? Well, what have you learned from doing this job and be able to apply it to your own hunting property? Like going from different places and learning, trying to pick things up. How have you applied it to your personal property?
That there's about 500,000 different ways you can do it. There's definitely wrong ways to do it. And there's a bunch of right ways too. But the thing I tell pretty much everybody that we talk to about deer hunting is it's a wild animal. At the end of the day, it's going to do whatever the heck it wants to do whenever it wants to do it. Now, a bunch of the time there's a rhyme or reason for it. But we have, that is, the other cool thing about this is when we go see other farms, we can take stuff that we learned just from that farm, and incorporate it back to our home farms here. Now we usually don't have, run into farms that are like what we have. Ours isn't anything special. It's 160 acres of CRP river bottom ground that's growing up in cottonwoods and sycamores and stuff. And it can it makes me want to rip my hair out some days. But we don't get into, to be honest with you, I don't know if I've really ever gotten into a farm that's like ours there. Now our other farm, we get into a bunch of them, old cattle farms that guys have bought, old hog farms, old cattle pasture, horse pasture, stuff like that. So that farm we don't do a whole lot of work on because it's still in production, whether it's in row crop or alfalfa. So we don't get to do a bunch of stuff to that. And especially with how times are right now, anything that we can do to keep making, keep having cash flow, is pretty crucial right now, especially with farming and raising cattle. So we don't do a bunch to that farm. We have a couple small plots, but understanding how deer move and use the terrain to get from one place to another is the key to that farm, and being able to be in the spots, at the right time during certain times of the year. Like I said, our 160 with all CRP bottoms, we've seen deer lay up beside trees in the wide open, and I don't know why. I couldn't tell you, other than the fact that they could see pretty good. But we do take a bunch of stuff from guys, and that's, like I said, we're still learning a bunch too. We go to pretty much every farm we go to, we usually come out with something different, learn something, whether it be, understanding a little bit better why deer are going through the farm this way. But we've learned a lot in 5 years, And that's what I think has been a big part to the business being able to keep growing like what it has is that we learn as much as we can, whether we're on a farm with somebody, on our own farm, or just out in the woods. That's what I tell the guys when we when we do walk properties, that take advantage of the time you're out there, not just to, obviously to be, in your place, your safe haven, but you got a chance to learn a lot when you're out there. And like I said, whether it be understanding why that group of does come up out of that corner of the field, you may walk back in there and there may be a steep bluff on one corner of that field, and they don't want to walk up that bluff, so they're coming up out of that corner of the field because it's easier for them to come access the field that way. Just stuff like that, and then taking that and understanding why deer do that. And one of the biggest things I've learned is how lazy deer can be and will be. And being able to use that against them, whether that be, mowing some stuff down, or putting, culverts in. I am a firm believer that culvert crossings are one of the best improvements, depending on how you have your farm set up, to put a deer exactly where you want him to come through. We have a couple on our farm, and it is a highway from October 18th to pretty much December 5th. I would say 70 to 80% of our deer cross that culvert within probably a 2-week span. I'd say probably that many deer go through there, and I would venture to say probably almost every deer on our farm at some point goes across that culvert.
Wow.
So
it makes sense. I mean, it seems like anytime I've seen trails in the woods, like trails for us humans, it's very obvious that the deer use the same trails.
Yeah.
So I mean, it makes sense.
Yeah, that's I mean, the walking, kind of go back on what we talked about earlier. Walking the farms with guys is pretty much a necessity when it comes to us wanting to do work on the farm. For guys, is I don't want to go in and do work for a farm when he has the wrong interpretation on how deer are using it. And you can go, like I said, you can go in and do stuff and it hurt your hunting. And I don't want to do that to somebody, and I don't want our name, to be on something like that. When we get done, I want him to be like, I'm happy, I'm happy he come out and did that. I want him to tell everybody that, hey, they come in, and our hunting is light years better than what it was. But you can do stuff, especially if you, I hate to use the word ignorant about deer, but that's what a lot of it comes down to. And not to knock on any landowners or anything like that, but that's there's a lot of it in there, and there's a lot of it, especially with social media these days. But we've had a lot better success when we've been able to go to farms with guys, and and even if it's just us explaining them, getting them to understand, the trail system on their farm, or understanding what you can do to make deer move, where you want them to, or entice them to move where you want them to move. Like I said, at the end of the day, it's a wild animal. They're going to do what they want when they want, and go wherever the heck they want to do.
Have you ever had a property that you got to, and when you did your initial analysis, that you just made the determination that there was not a whole lot that you could do? Like, have you ever ran into like a property that just didn't work?
We have some where there's almost always something you can do. Well, there is always something that you can do. but it may not be 15 or 20 different things. It may be 2 things. We've walked them before where it's like we have one farm that we went and walked. It's over in Indiana this year. And if he sees or hears this podcast, he'll call me about it. We got a pretty good relationship. We call it Kansas. It's over in Indiana, and this farm is a spitting image of what Kansas looks like.
Tall grass.
Grass. It's a creek bottom with about 40 yards of grass on each side of it, and just open pasture. But you get down in there and look at it, and when you get down along the creek, it looks like Kansas. And so we call it, that's what we call the farm, Kansas. When we send all the invoices and the design and the plan and the schedule and everything over to him, it is all titled Kansas. That's what he doesn't want it his name. He doesn't want it anything else other than Kansas. But it's one of them farms where there wasn't much to do, or there wasn't much that we could do to it. But it was a farm that lacked a bunch of bedding. His rut hunting was phenomenal because he was a connecting piece from big timber to big timber. But he did not hold deer whatsoever. So our majority of the plan was to go in and add as much bedding as we could, and then place food according to that. So, to be honest with you, it was pretty much like 3 or 4 things on 60 acres or something like that. So we do, like I said, we get in some situations, I shouldn't even call them situations, but some farms that it's like, well, I can think of 3 things that will drastically change this farm. And it may be something as simple as adding more bedding, changing your stand locations, and changing the shape of your food plot or moving your food plot somewhere. And then there's some farms where it's like, okay, we need to go in and add this bedding here. We need to put a water hole here, a culvert crossing here. We're going to move your stands to this side, move your stands. We're going to put scrapes here, mock scrapes here. The list can go on some farms where I'll send them to guys and it's like 2 or 3 pages of, a process sheet. But like you and I were talking earlier, I try to make it as simple as for guys. I told them I want a 10-year-old to look at it and be like, oh, this is the food plot. This is where the stand is, and to a lot of guys, the more it is like that, the more they want to do. And because we've gotten on some farms where some pretty popular guys have walked it and sent their plan to them, and it's like 12 pages long, and they're like, I don't know where to start, and that's what I tell them, like that's
overwhelming.
It's super overwhelming. That's the whole point for you guys that they call us, is because they don't know where to start or they don't know what to do, and then you give them a 10-page paper to decipher through. That's just another headache when they just want to be told, this 2 acres, let's put this 2 acres in clover, or this 5 acres in corn, or this 5 acres in bedding, or whatever. They're looking, that's what they're looking for. They're not looking for a big, a big book.
Slideshow presentation.
Yeah. And my experience is doing it, so far in 4 years, that's what we've had guys that have been, super happy with that. And like I said, we've been on 2 farms that have had, he's emailed it to me and I don't even go through it myself, the whole thing, because I'm not going to sit here and spend, 2 hours reading a 12-page paper on it. I went to school. I did that. and I hated it. That's why I'm doing this,
the thesis or something.
Yeah. And, and I think we've overcomplicated hunting a bunch, because like our granddads, they went in flannels and Carhartt pants and sat by a tree, with their 12 gauge,
Yeah.
And there are some absolute mega giant deer that are sitting in houses that will never, ever get talked about, shown, seen. I mean, there was just a deer in Illinois that got, just exposed just recently in the last month or whatever, that was in a basement. I don't even remember what it scored now. I'm sure you guys probably saw it on Facebook somewhere. It went pretty crazy on Facebook. But
I don't think I have, but I'm going to look it up now.
I'm looking it up right now.
Yeah.
I can't wait.
It was at the Illinois Deer Classic and stuff. It was a pretty hot topic. I don't know. I don't remember the exact story, but it had been sitting in a basement, in the basement or an attic or something like that. And it's just the skull cap and the antlers, and it's a mega giant. And that guy wasn't sitting with Onyx and Ozonics and Sitka gear.
Sitka gear, yeah.
Yeah. He was sitting probably on a 5-gallon bucket beside
smoking a cigarette.
Yeah, smoking a cigarette beside a big white oak or something on this little pinch. And and that's, I tell guys, like, they didn't have YouTube, they didn't have these podcasts, they didn't have all that stuff. They saw a heavy used deer trail, and they went and set their bucket beside it, and they set 50 yards off it, 35 yards off it, or whatever, and they knew from October 22nd to November 15th, the bucks are cruising like crazy because it's the rut. And that's what I feel, and I see it every day on social media, guys asking 100 questions about stuff that it's like, I want to be like, dude, it's not that complicated. You're overthinking it. You're getting yourself worked up, and it's not that, not that complicated. And I get myself like that when I'm hunting my own deer that I'm trying to kill. I mean, we had one buck this year. He was a 10 and 100, probably low 170s or whatever. And I mean, he was just eating me alive. I could not for the life of me figure out what he was doing. And I made a phone call to a pretty good friend that kills a bunch of big deer. And he goes, dude, you're overthinking this, like, big time. It's, the deer bedding here and here, and he's coming to your food plots, and it's a waiting game. And that's what a lot of, that's what a lot of it is just, it's a bunch of luck and being in the right spot at the right time. And I mean, our farm is set up, really, really good, and being able to, how deer, want to move through it and use it. And I didn't shoot a buck this year. But yeah, I mean, it's something that I feel like we've overcomplicated a bunch of, and
I feel like it's easy to fall into that because I'm new to hunting, Dylan. I've only been hunting for about 2 years.
Okay.
Well, 2 seasons. And there's just so much information out that it's a little overwhelming. Like, I'm trying to learn shit, but then when I get overwhelmed, I'm just like, dude, just keep hunting. Just keep hunting and keep paying attention, and you'll start answering a lot of your questions. But I do enjoy doing the deep dive sometime.
Yeah, there's like I said, there's a bunch of really, really good information out there. A bunch of very, very intelligent guys, and a bunch of really good YouTube channels and stuff like that to follow and pay attention to and listen to. And but there's a bunch of bad stuff too. I mean, I shouldn't say bad, but not what should be. I shouldn't say should be out there, but I mean, there's like everything, there's good and there's bad with all of it. But yeah, I mean, you're going to learn more from what you do in the woods, because you're going to, at some point, you're going to have a buck that of a lifetime to you, or a deer that you will always remember, and you're going to screw up on it, and you're going to be pissed, and you're going to be like, what the hell did I do wrong? And then 2 days later, after you spend 48 hours sitting there replaying it over in your head nonstop, don't sleep for the next 3 weeks, and then finally a light bulb will go off and be like, why did I do that? I could probably have 15 deer over 150, 160 on our wall and I've, have learned since I've been hunting by myself since I was 11. And I still do. I had 3 years ago, I screwed up because I was trying to still film, and I had a high 170s pin come in, and the freaking camera cost me him. And I still take the camera with me, but I'm not going to set the camera up like that ever again. I can promise you that. And I've set up on deer where, I knew the wind was going to be, on, pretty borderline on him being able to catch it. And my thermals, praying that my thermals were going to keep my scent from going down to where I expected him to come from. And that's kind of the thing, the gamble you take with stuff. And he come from where I expected him to come from. And my thermals, weren't rising like what I was hoping they were in the morning, as strong as what they were. But it's like I said, that's the gamble you take with stuff like that. But I mean, you're going to learn. I mean, you'll learn a bunch. It'll be, it'll be frustrating. I can tell you that. And I'm only 23, and I've learned a bunch from stupid stuff that I've done. And, I mean, that's the fun part though, too, is
learning,
being like, all right, I got a whole nother season to do it next year, figure, learn more. Or if you do it early, I still got 2.5 months to, redeem myself. And I mean, we've screwed up on deer, and then 2 days later, we've killed a completely different buck, or we've killed them before, and then we've had deer. I mean, do you guys muzzleloader hunt or anything? You rifle? Bow?
No, never do.
Pretty much bow.
Okay.
And then during gun season, if we do have like really cold weather and I really want to bundle up and just kind of hunker down, I'll grab my gun every now and again. But I really favor the bow. Yeah,
that's what we gun hunt when shotgun season comes. It's I've done it since I was 6, 7. So it's it's a pretty big tradition for us to go out on shotgun season. But I always use a muzzleloader. And it's cost me 2 deer because I didn't take care of it. I didn't change the powder. I didn't clean it when I got back, and I've had it misfire on 2 really, really big deer. And just stuff like that. And I'm sure one time it's going to be your bow, or if you run I don't know if you run an adjustable sight, but I've pulled back on deer and my sight's been all the way adjusted from target practice the night before down to 60 or whatever, 50, and he's standing there at 30 yards and I don't have my pin set how it should be. There's going to be a bunch of stuff like that, and like I said, if I was perfect, I'd have a whole freaking wall of big deer, hanging on it. But
that's the one thing that has been pretty unanimous from all of the people that we've talked to, is that everybody's had the failures out there too.
Yeah.
Like, I've never met anybody who says everything always goes right. It's actually the exact opposite.
Yeah.
Everybody tells me that things are going to go wrong frequently, and be able to adjust.
Yeah. Yeah. It's, I mean, it's one of my favorite things to do, besides chase turkeys in the spring. But I mean, like I said, if I was perfect, I'd have 15 deer, big deer hanging on the wall. But you don't, and a lot of times you don't learn as much. Most of the time you don't learn as much when you do succeed in those hunts. Now you'll be like, you may be like, oh, it makes sense why he did that, but you're usually too busy celebrating and everything else. And to whereas, well, if I screwed up, or if I ranged the wrong tree or used the wrong pin or did something dumb, you'll be like, well, then you're going to sit there and dwell on it. I mean, I always do when I've messed up. You're going to sit there and think about it, and you're going to replay it, 100 times in your head over and over. And that's how I've always learned, is 100% off of the stuff I've screwed up and the bucks I've screwed up on. But like I said, that's the fun part of it, and that's why we keep doing it. If I went out every single year and killed 160-inch deer, 150-inch deer, I would probably
be done by now.
Yeah, I probably wouldn't be doing I shouldn't say wouldn't be doing it, but I mean,
pull out the little recurve.
Yeah, we would be, yeah. It would be a recurve or, something like that, trying to make it to where I push myself to fail, type of thing. But yeah, it's there. I love deer hunting. I love turkey hunting, but to me, there's just nothing. That's the other. I think that's why I like turkey hunting so much too. Is, I mean, you're going to fail a bunch, especially around here. I mean, it's not just like there's some spots that, I mean, there's some pretty easy hunting in some places for birds out here, but there's some really, really tough stuff, especially on some parcels that we can hunt. But yeah, you're gonna fail a bunch, and it's gonna be like, dude, I hate this. It pisses you off. But yeah, it's we've had times, like I said, where it's been like packing my bow up and I'm putting it in the basement, and it's November 2nd, and tomorrow you go out and you see a completely different deer that's 15 inches bigger, and you may get a shot at him, or you may not, but that's the awesome thing. I tell guys, when the rut does hit, and when we set farms up, I mean, that's what we talk to guys about. Like, okay, do you plan on hunting just the rut, or do you plan on hunting, early season? Are you hunting from October 1st to January, 15th or whatever it is? And that kind of helps us understand what their, what goal they have in mind too, is if their main goal is to hunt the rut, then that's going to be completely different than setting the farm up to hunt late season and putting a bunch of food plots on it, or a big food plot on it. So like, learning that's stuff that we've learned, that we've screwed up and failed. Luckily, most of that is on our own farm and not for a, paying customer or client, that we've been able to learn that. But yeah, I'm happy to see another person, getting into it. But man, it's going to be, you're going to have times you're like,
well, yeah, I did fuck up this year, on 2 good deer in the same sit, 60 seconds apart.
Yeah.
I missed the first one. And then when I was contemplating suicide in my tree stand, another one came in, and I think I got in my head, and I was questioning, like, was it my bow? Like, is something wrong with my bow?
Mm-hmm.
Like, was that too far of a shot? And then when this next one came in, he came into an area that I had already ranged. Like, I already knew, like, that was one of my areas that I did not have to pull my rangefinder out. Like, it was one of those predetermined ones.
Yep.
And when he came in, as he was getting closer, he was big. So at first, I thought I fucked up on the big one, and that a smaller one was coming in, and I was like, okay, that one was out of your league. Go ahead and redeem yourself on this young one here. But as he started coming in, he was fucking big too. So then I started getting, like, essentially I got like stage fright. Like, I didn't even attempt to shoot that second one, because I was telling myself that I'm going to fuck that one up too.
Yeah.
Or I'm going to put a bad shot on him. And I hadn't really had time to process everything yet. And I got the double whammy, like, right on top of me. And yeah, I've been thinking about that ever since. But I'm to the point now where I don't, like, I feel confident where I can go out and whack a deer right now, and that I know what I did wrong and what I'm going to do differently. But initially it was almost like a shock. Like, I just couldn't believe that happened. And I was like, you're never going to have an opportunity like that again. But everything that you guys keep telling me about what's going to happen in my bow hunting journey, I've learned a couple humble lessons so far, but I'm sure I've got a lot more to do.
Bow hunting is a very humbling hobby. It's like I said, one of the first what I would call good bucks that I shot at, I was probably 13 with a bow, and I shot him right in the shoulder. And you know what I did on the next 2 bucks? Shot him in the gut, because I was so worried about shooting them in the shoulders
that you were adjusting too much.
That I was adjusting too much, and the next 2 deer I shot them in the guts because I was so worried about it. And then that becomes a whole nother, thing to stress about and worry about is, okay, now I got to let them lay for 12, 16, 18 hours. And hope coyotes don't get on him. Hope he doesn't, go across the river, go get somewhere we're not going to find him. And then overall finding him, and I'm sure there are probably 2 or 3 bucks out there that I've shot. I know for sure that I've shot and have not found because, I was worried about not shooting him not hitting him in the shoulder, but also not taking my time and focusing on where that pin needs to settle and shoot, and that's the thing. Like I said, if you can learn to bounce back after those things, that's what it's like. That's what was like frustrating to me when I made those mistakes. It's like it's just an animal, dude. Like it's just a wild animal. I don't know why you're getting so worked up over it. But it's the respect for them, on wanting to make a good kill or a good shot, and not wanting to screw up, and you spend a bunch of hours practicing and stuff like that, and wanting to make a good, clean, quick shot. But yeah, I've done that where I've worried about shooting them in the shoulder, then the next 2 deer I shoot them in the guts, and those were the first 2 deer I've ever dealt with that, and that was a whole new experience for me, was dealing with having to wait that long to go to go look for them.
Yeah, you ain't sleeping that night.
No. And yeah, those are just, we could sit here and talk till we're blue in the face about stories like that where I've done had messed up stuff. But no, it's I think that's why I like bow hunting so much, and why so many guys do enjoy it so much, because it is, it's 100% a challenge. I mean, there's nothing about, there's no other way about it. Is you're getting a wild animal within 30 yards of you, or whatever, and their whole goal is to survive, 24/7, all day, every day, all year long. Is there's something out there that wants to kill them, and so they, it's, you got to beat them 100% at what they're bred to do and trying to do. Yeah. And yeah, that's and I mean, don't get me wrong, I like gun hunting. I don't it's not what I look forward to. I look forward to October 1st to get the bow out, but I can tell you right now, if he's sitting out there at 100 yards, 150 yards and I got the muzzleloader, I'm not just going to say, well, I don't have my bow.
Yeah.
Darn. But
yeah, for sure.
I've killed my biggest buck that I killed, I shot with a bow, but I have 3 pretty nice deer on the wall that I've shot with my muzzleloader. And that's part of the reason why I stick with the muzzleloader. There's a lot more variables to a muzzleloader than there is a 20 gauge. Like I said, there should be 2 deer on the wall. That just because one was I didn't clean the gun the night before, because we had real hot weather and the gun started sweating and the powder got wet. And the other one was I was hunting in rain and I didn't tape over the end of my barrel, and water got in the barrel. But yeah, I mean, with a rifle, you don't worry about that, or a shot 20 gauge, you don't worry about that stuff, and just adds another factor, another, challenge factor to it, on, more room for air. And that's how I feel, about
Yeah,
muzzleloader.
it's more like old school, and it's more of like the
Yeah.
traditional way.
Yeah. Granted, I mean, I've shot a doe at 370 yards or whatever with my muzzleloader before. I mean, it'll reach out there and poke a deer like a rifle will, but I mean, like I said, I've solely because it's a muzzleloader, I've missed deer just because of, it's a muzzleloader, not a, a shotgun. But, and do I wish I had the 20 gauge? 100%. Do I wish I had just grabbed it out of the safe? 100% I do. But, that's
Yeah, we can always Monday morning quarterback stuff.
Yeah.
Because those 2 deer that I fucked up on, if I had my shotgun, I would have killed 2 big bucks that day.
Yeah.
It would have been a chip shot for my 12 gauge.
Yeah.
But like you said, it's more rewarding when you get it with your bow.
Yeah. Yeah. It's, I mean, my biggest deer I shot, I was sitting on the ground, and I shot him at like 40 yards or whatever, sitting on the ground. And
wow,
I will never ever, I mean, till I flatline, I will never forget that hunt. I mean, I still remember all my gun kills, my buck kills and stuff like that. But I mean, there's nothing, in my opinion, other than a gobbler, letting one rip at 20 yards in your face. But to have a full grown, mature buck at 25, 30 yards right there, and being, like I said, being in his habitat, where he's safe, and being able to, pull that off. Yeah, that was a hunt that I'll never forget that. It was, I actually had him at like 18, and I couldn't, it's a long story. It was a fun hunt, but
so yeah, when you drew back your bow, were you still on your butt, or did you like shoot from your knees?
I was sitting on a like one of them little tripod tiny swivel chairs.
Okay.
That are like, they sit, like 24 inches off the ground or whatever, 30 inches off, the little bitty ones, which I was 15 or 14 when this happened. And I was sitting on one of them little bitty chairs beside a giant, I couldn't even tell you what kind of tree it was now. Just a huge, like, probably like a red oak or something like that. Just a giant tree. The roots were grown up out of the ground. So like it was that big of a tree that the roots were starting to come up out of the ground. And I just tucked myself up in between the roots. And I shot him sitting down on that seat. The first shot was 20 yards and I shot underneath him. And then the second shot was 42 and I 12 ringed him at 42 yards. Yeah.
Nice.
Luckily he had a doe with her. October 18th, he come in from a spot that I never expected a deer to come from, chasing her and dogging her. And at 20 yards, 22 yards, he tried breeding her. I listened to him growl and snort at her. And he stood up at one point, stood up on his back legs and pulled the top of a little sapling down and made a scrape at 20 yards. And it's one of them stories that I tell guys, and they're like, oh, bullshit. Like that's something you see, like, on, that's something Jury Brothers post, on TV. And it was one of the most surreal encounters. I mean, everything that a buck does during a breeding sequence or a breeding season. I saw him do everything but, pretty much get on top of her at 20, 22 yards. And at 14 years old, he ended up scoring like 154 as an 8. He's a typical 8, just over 150s. So he's like I said, 20 yards. He's sitting right there. And at 14, this was the biggest buck, pretty much the biggest deer I've ever seen at that time. And I still am not sure how he could not hear my bow or my release rattling when he was sitting there.
Because you were shaking?
I was shaking so bad. Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
It was 20 yards, and I just sailed it. I mean, just right underneath him. It went. I was a hot mess. But
have you ever had that sensation in any of your hunts since then? Like how that deer had you feeling at 14? Have you experienced that again?
Pretty much every buck that I want to shoot, harvest.
It's got to give you that feeling.
Yeah. If I have to second guess if I want to shoot him, I won't shoot that deer.
Okay. Because
9 times out of 10, I've done it twice. I've second guessed if I want to shoot him, and I've shot him. And when I get up to him, I'm not happy. I was upset that I shot him because he wasn't as big as what and usually, I mean, usually there's ground shrinkage when you get to them. But when you don't even second guess if he's a shooter or not, most times there's not. There's usually not ground shrinkage. You get up to him, he's like, okay, I knew he was that big, or he's bigger when you get up to him.
Yep.
And that's how this buck was. So it was one of them things. I just, like I said, 12, 13 years old, I had all them screw ups learning. I was hunting by myself with a bow, learning, trying to learn as much as I could, because I wanted to, I wanted, like everybody else, I wanted to go shoot 160, 170 inch deer with my bow, 150 inch deer. Heck, I was going to shoot pretty much anything that had a rack on it when I was 12. It was one of them things I had to calm myself down and be like, don't look at his rack, because every time I sit there and look at his rack, I would just get worse and worse and worse. And, don't look at his rack, try to control my shaking and my breathing and just like, and I remember very vividly the whole entire time he was working his way inside the timber to me, staring at where I wanted to shoot him at the whole time. As soon as I knew I wanted to shoot him, whether he was looking directly at me or whatever, I had a spot picked on him that I wanted to shoot him, or where I was going to aim. And that helped me keep my, emotions down until I pulled back and I had to look through my peep at him. Then it was just, it was like that.
Surreal.
Yeah. Like it just took over my body. And I just airmailed it right underneath him. Didn't even touch him. Didn't hit any, hair, nothing. And luckily that doe was still there, and he made a little loop in the timber, and I shot him. He happened to stop by a log that I ranged, and it was 42 yards, and I shot him, and he ended up running like 100 yards or something like that. But yeah, it was one of them things, like how we talked about redeeming yourself, especially being able to do it that quick. But when he made that loop and I got a chance to shoot him again, it was like my shaking completely stopped, because it was like tunnel vision. Like
flight.
Yeah. Yep. It was like, okay, like this is the biggest deer I've ever had this close. It's time to get your shit together and make a shot, and that was one of the only times where I've really felt like that, especially with a bow. Been like I remember like 100% feeling like I was in tunnel vision on him, and making sure like I'm not going to get a chance at this deer. And he's still the biggest deer I've ever killed. And
that's just your killer instincts taking over.
Yeah, it 100% was. It was, I talked to guys about that, and they're like, dude, you just went like, like you said, killer instincts, just complete like tunnel vision, and let's make it happen, because I, screwed around and screwed up at a 20-yard chip shot. October 18th or whatever it was. Yeah, 18th. He wasn't even rutting yet. So he's 250 pounds. 5.5-year-old deer at 20 yards, 18 yards. It looks like a cow standing there. And both of your pins take up his lungs, pretty much. And I don't know how I did, but I did. I screwed it up. But yeah, that's. I loved hunting before that. And once I got to experience that was like a big switch for me when that happened. And And I don't know if it was the failure and the immediate success right after it, or if it was a combination of that and feeling like I was like not interacting with him, but being right there when all that, happened at, like I said, 20 yards. And I mean, I will never forget the growl. I mean, it wasn't like a grunt. It wasn't a snort wheeze. It was like, if you heard it at night, you would turn and run the other way type of growl. And I've never really heard a buck do that before. And
it was a rape growl.
Yeah. I mean, it was one of them. Like I remember looking and being like, what the hell was that? Like I've never heard a deer, you hear the snort wheezes and you hear the grunts, like, on YouTube and like all that stuff. And that was the first time I've like heard a vocalization that close. And it was just like, I did not know a deer would make that kind of sound. But yeah, that was pretty much the switch for me that really got me, kind of addicted to all of it. But
it'd have the same impact on me for sure. Anytime that you happen to catch one of those phenomenons in nature, like for example, like whenever I see a bald eagle out in nature, there's just something about that. Like I'm like, man, I'm lucky to have been here and seen that. And something like that you just don't really see. Like, it happens, but to be able to see it in person, yeah, I bet that it makes sense why you'll never forget it.
Yeah. Yeah. Like I said, it's one of them things. Like I may hunt for another 60 years and never, ever have an encounter like that ever again. And it's something at that time, I was so caught up in shooting a deer at that, I mean, at 155-inch 8-pointer is a big, big 8-pointer. But to me, it was like shooting a 180-inch deer at that time. And, but now it was the whole encounter and the whole hunt. But I 100% took that encounter for granted when I shot that buck. I was so, happy and excited about being able to kill a deer that big. But now that I've, had success since then with bucks and had that same feeling of harvesting, a big deer, it's 100%, like I said, and I kind of regret it that I took that encounter for granted, because like I said, I've never ever had anything like that ever happen to me since, and may never ever do still. But yeah, now when I look back on it, it's like that was something that was, like I said, super surreal and pretty cool and pretty special to see something like that. I mean, I've seen bucks breed does out in fields and stuff like that, and you see them chase buck, you chase each other off and fight and stuff like that. But to be right there with him and him have no knowledge of me whatsoever that I was even there, to vocalize with her and to do the stuff that he was doing right there. I mean, it was, like I said, 18 yards. I will never ever forget being that close to it. I mean, you could smell him. He was so close you could smell him.
Yeah, stunk like shit.
Yeah, I mean, just reeked of a rotten buck. And that was actually how I ended up finding him, is because we could smell him. And
wow.
But yeah, I mean, it was pretty cool. Like I said, just the moments like that where you're like, and I'm sure it's come with age, since I've gotten older too, is starting to appreciate like stuff like that. And like I said, like seeing a bald eagle, we don't have them much around here. We don't see them a whole lot. But when we do, there's cars parked along the highway where if there's an eagle out in the field, and people just stop and they stop to see them and look at them and watch them, and because there's just not many of them around here down where we're at here. But
I think that's why a lot of people like hunting, is because you get those once in a lifetime moments, and they just never go away. And then you might maybe get something close to that experience later down in your hunting journey, but you're always just going to have sometimes that one moment, or it's just like, I remember A to Z, every small little detail about it. And that's why I love bow hunting mostly.
I could tell you, I could walk you step for step from the time I left the truck to where I was sitting. And I mean, I could, like I said, you remember A to Z, every single thing. And I mean, like it was a hunt. There was a lot more that happened than just going out there and harvesting, a big mature, and it was on public ground. So, that was another thing that was, was pretty special for me to do it on public and at 14 or whatever I was. But yeah, it was, like I said, I could take you, I mean, step for step all the way through the whole entire hunt. I could tell you exactly, I could take you to the spot where I found him right now. And
oh, wow.
So at 14, when you found him, did you get help dragging his big ass out, or did you do that alone?
My father and I don't know if I'll have to text you guys the photo of it. There's a picture of me. We found him, and I'm sitting like straddled on top of him and holding his head up, and he has a bigger frame than our 172 inch in the house. He's got six and a quarter bases, and his main beams are like 24, 25 inches long. And I mean, he's got a frame. He was 21 inches wide or something like that, his inside spread. Yeah, there's a picture of me straddled on top of him like bear, like riding a horse, and holding his head up. And it's everything for me. I have my elbows on my knees holding his head up because he was so big.
I'm sure your dad was in disbelief.
Yeah, because he was hunting that night, but he was 2 draws over, and he heard the shot. He could hear the shot in the timber, but he thought he heard the shot. He heard him taking off running through the brush is what he ended up hearing. But we did not know if he was dead or not. The shot, what ended up being, was a quartering away shot through the liver and opposite lung. So okay. He didn't bleed very good. He bled good for about 30 yards, and that was it. And so we ended up actually stopping, tracking him, and went back the next morning to find him. Well, that was how we found him, is that we were walking blind. We hadn't turned the lights on yet. It was in the dark. We hadn't turned any lights on yet because we were wanting to wait till it got lights in case he was still alive. That hopefully if he was alive, we'd be able to walk up on him, and we didn't want to spook him with lights, shining through the timber. But we got to about 50 yards from where we stopped tracking him. And the only reason we knew we were close is because we had a lighted knock on the end of one of our arrows. We turned it on and stuck it in the ground so we could find it. So that it was sticking, sticking 30 inches up out of the ground. And we could see it about 50 yards up ahead of us. And the reason we stopped that night before is because we could smell him. So we knew we were close to him. And so we decided to back out. And like I said, we come in the next morning, and we got to about 50 yards from that light, and it was pitch black. And so I grabbed my light and turned it on, and he was standing right in between both of us. Like we were 25 yards from him when we stopped. And at that time, since I was going in on public, I didn't have headlamps. I just had my phone light. I don't know why. If I'd have had a headlamp, we'd have found him. He died on the run, all sprawled out. Wasn't in bed or nothing. And the reason we could smell him is because we were literally like 15 yards from him. We just couldn't see him with our lights. And so when we come back the next morning, we had, headlights or headlamps and everything with us, flashlights. And we stopped, and we could smell him still. And I just happened to click it on, and he was right in between where we were and where my arrow was sitting there glowing. And that's it. And my dad, I told Dad when he come over to get me, I called him and was like, "Hey, I just shot a pretty good one." And And he kept asking me, he goes, how big is it? And I kept telling him, I was like, I don't know. Like, I was guessing like 120, 130 inch 8-pointer is what I was guessing. Like I said, I saw the rack and I looked at it one time and knew it was a big deer, like a shooter. I wanted to shoot and never looked at his rack again. I couldn't tell you if it was a 12-pointer, a 16. I just saw a big frame coming through and saw it was big enough I wanted to shoot, and I never looked at his antlers again. And I just kept telling Dad, I think it's 120, 130 inch deer. And we get up, turn the light on, get up to him, and I pick him up, and it's 150 some inches of antler sitting there in an 8-point, not a 10, in a big 8-point frame. And his first words were, "Holy shit!" And he goes, I don't remember the exact conversation. I mean, he's like, it was something like, I don't think you realize what you just shot, or something like that,
Yeah.
and I didn't either. Like I said, I didn't realize it was that big of a deer. I didn't realize the frame was that big on him. Like I said, I just saw a big frame, and it was one of them. Like I will never forget stepping over top of him and grabbing him and picking him up, and my dad with his phone taking a picture of it right there. And if I could pull the picture up and you saw it, it shows how big of a frame and how big of a deer, it was. And like I said, it was the middle of October, beginning of October. So he hadn't, ran down much or anything yet. And yeah, so I had to have help. There was no way. And back in this public, it is like steep draws, and not like, oh, there's a 60-acre field and some timber back there. It's like 600 acres of timber and like steep draws to drag them around through. It was it was not easy. It was a task, that's for sure.
Yeah, but you were pumping with adrenaline, I'm sure.
Oh,
so.
yeah. We took advantage of the hills going down, and he was pretty much big enough that you could take him and push him, and he'd just slide down the side of the hill. And it was. We were. The worst part about it was I had school that morning, so I couldn't, spend all morning, enjoying it, which I did at school and stuff. So we had to be quick with it and everything, and got back. And my mom's a professional photographer, so she had all her camera stuff ready, and all that. And so we have some awesome pictures with them. And, but yeah, it was like, quick, I got to be at school at 7:30 or whatever, 8 o'clock. And
I would have let you stay at home that day.
Yeah, I end up going in late because of the I had to get him scun out because his hide was starting to the hair was starting to pull out already, because it was like, I was sitting in jeans and a t-shirt when I shot him, and so it was, that night was like 60 degrees or something, real high 50s. We weren't able, that was the other part that, kind of sucked, is we weren't able to keep any of the meat off of him. And the hide was, if you look at his chest right now, there's a couple spots on his chest, or underneath his throat patch, that the hair was starting to come out. But yeah, it was hot. It was brutally, especially that next morning, trying to drag him out of there. I mean, I probably lost 10 pounds in sweat trying to get him out of there. But my dad at that time, he did most of it. I can't take much credit for doing the pulling, because I don't think I was a heck of a whole lot of help when it come to pulling him. But
oh, that's awesome, Dylan. But with that being said, time to wrap up the show for tonight. Was there anything that we didn't cover tonight that you would like to kind of final say before we close out the night?
No, if you guys, nothing you guys want to hit me with or whatever, I'm good.
Just wanted to thank you again. I really enjoyed the insight on your business with the land management. I haven't talked to anybody yet who's done that, so I think that's a cool perspective to kind of get a little exposure into what your life is like with your business. And also, I really enjoyed that story, man, about your first big buck that you killed. But yeah, just thank you for your time, and best of luck as you grow your business and as you continue to hunt. And yeah, man, had a great time.
Nope. I appreciate it, guys. Don't definitely stay in touch with me. That's why I do this. I like helping guys. I want to see other guys, be successful with it. I've been super fortunate with a dad that has allowed me that he's wanted to see me be, successful and with the business and with hunting. And so that's rubbed off on me a bunch. And like I said, that's why I do the business. I want to see other guys, have that kind of luck. And if they're lucky enough to take their kids out and do it with their kids, that's, that much sweeter. But yeah, I appreciate you guys, getting a hold of me and letting me to talk and stuff and stay in touch. And hopefully we can do it again sometime.
Oh yeah, man, for sure.
How can they find you if they want to get in contact about you and your business?
So my Facebook page, Wabash River Outdoors, you can find us on there. We are on YouTube. We try to put out some videos every now and then. We try to push more of the educational stuff. It's called Plot Twist on YouTube. So the business pretty much owns the YouTube channel is what it is, instead of using the business name on YouTube. It's kind of a twist off of the business, like I said, in the educational side of stuff. And then Instagram, we're on Instagram, Plot Twist Land. That's pretty much the YouTube side of stuff too. And then my personal page, Dylan Bushur on Facebook. We try to stay active. The Instagram we don't post as much on the Instagram stuff, but Facebook, my Facebook business page, we are posting, quite a bit, pretty much, not daily, but we're pretty close to every other day with project updates and photos and stuff like that. So
we'll make sure to put those links when this video goes released on our podcast platforms.
Awesome. I appreciate it, guys.
Well, Dylan,
absolutely, man.
I was just going to say as well, thanks again for taking the time to come out with us and talk with us. We really do appreciate it.
Yep.
Have a good night, Dylan.
Yep. See you guys.
Heck yeah.
Yeah.
Nice start to Illinois.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I'm kind of glad that we had him on to start the week off because, we kind of got to cover a different angle that we haven't really done yet. And we still have 4 days, 3 more days of Illinois to learn some more about the state itself. But having that opportunity to have somebody on who does property management and stuff, I enjoyed it, learning about that. I've been curious about that.
Yeah, it was kind of cool to get like an insider's perspective on what they do day in and day out in that type of world.
There's a lot that goes into it.
Yeah. Well, it's funny. I'm going to start ending the shows like this. It's become a running joke in the Bowden family. So every time my grandpa comes to a family event and it's time for him to leave, or like when he wants to leave, he slaps his hands on his knees and he goes, "Well, it's that time for me to go on out." And there's sometimes he'll get up and not do it. And we're like, "No, you guys sit back down and you got to do well." So now everyone does well with him. So, I figured we'll start adding that into the show. Thanks, Grandpa, for that little whatever fun bit you want to call it. But don't forget, if you want to become a guest on the show, message us on our social media platforms. We do a live show Monday through Thursday, 8:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. This week, we're still covering Illinois. It is March 25th, I believe. Yep. And we have some awesome guests still lined up for the rest of the week. Other than that, yeah. Don't forget to check out our social media platforms, or our podcast platforms on our previous episodes. Dan, any lasting words for the night?
Have a good one. Well, actually, think it's about that time.
I think it's about that time.
Thank you for tuning in to another episode of the Whitetail Advantage Podcast. We hope you enjoyed the show, and we will see you next time.